Hey, it's Christopher Cardinal, and you're listening to the super, fantastic, above average racing spectacular. Hey, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well out there. And here we are, round number 8. The round of 8 coming up. Kansas is in the books. Chase Elliott. Things change, huh? Couldn't buy win last 2 seasons. Rolls off 2 in the last 3 races. 3 for the season. Final Chevrolet car left in the championship playoff, and Hendrick Motorsports' cornerstone driver for the future is starting to stock is rising through the roof. Good for him. So we're going to get into Kansas here in a moment, the final race of the round of 12. Considered to be a letdown as you look at some of the commentary online. Didn't deliver on the theatrics that everyone desired. They were craving. Want to see some, I guess, Cinderella finishes. Expect the unexpected. Well, race was kind of flat, was it not? The result was pretty fantastic. I mean, Chase Elliott, never get tired of him winning. I think it's long overdue. But just didn't quite generate that Game 7 feel or that anything can happen theatrical run that everyone has come to expect from races that are traditionally full of attrition and chaos and carnage in a final elimination race. Well, maybe they got to rethink it and restructure the schedule, go back maybe to Talladega as an elimination race if they want the viewership, and if that's indeed what they're in search of, is the theatrics and the drama. Well, not everyone's into that, and I think I would agree on switching the schedule around. I mean, keeping it fresh so it doesn't get stale. But at this point, it looks like this is going to be an elimination race a year from now. And so we'll just focus on the actual event. And Chase Elliott, as I said, is a winner again. That's a third career win for him. Second win in the playoffs as he went over. So as we said at the top of the show, 2 wins in the last 3 races in the round 12. Fourth in the standings heading into the round of 8, the next 3 races: Martinsville, Texas, and Phoenix. Final 4, I've penciled him in. I've said it numerous times on this program and say it again. Just who's going to join him there. I think he should have been there last season. Thank you, Denny Hamlin. I'm not going to let that go anytime soon. And here it is, a year later. And this is the anniversary of it. This is Martinsville this weekend. Fireworks in full? Probably not, but it's going to be one of those memories that NASCAR enthusiasts, do not forget anytime soon. So this is that final Chevrolet car in the playoffs. Ford is 5, Toyota 2. Last man standing for Chevrolet, Chase Elliott. Who would have thought so? The season started. So this is 3 wins in the last 11 races after an 0 for 98. So it's like 2 years and most of this season gone by. He hasn't won a race, and he's got 3 wins in the last 11. Is he not on fire? He is certainly making up for missed opportunities. And Alan Gustafson, his crew chief, back on top, is relevant again. It's been for a long time. So this is the most wins since 2014 for Gustafson. He had 4 with Jeff Gordon in 2014. And 2009, he was runner-up crew chief in the standings with Mark Martin. He had 5 wins, 14 top 5s, 21 top 10s. It's a little bit of racing karma coming up for Chase. Can Chase win at Martinsville? That 2 consecutive for him. Make up for last year. I think everybody still remembers last year. It's eventually Kyle Busch goes on to win. But Felt like he could have won this race a year ago, and be talking about the winless drought. Just in any case, what it is, Chase Elliott has found his groove and is working his way up and starting to finally live up to the expectations that certainly he knew he would live up to. But I think a lot of the racing marks out there expected results sooner. Didn't quite think it would take this long, but now that he's finally got the albatross around his neck, weight lifted off his shoulders, he is gone on one heck of a run and is looking like a real championship contender. I'm going to say dark horse because I don't like using that term, but in any case, he is very much championship contender and someone that is not to be taken lightly in the next 4 races. He's a legitimate contender for this championship. Not necessarily know. I think he's going to win one more time. I just don't know where. I think he might win in South Beach, but that's not to get ahead of ourselves. But and to then, can he win Martinsville, Texas, or Phoenix? Absolutely. Most favorably, you look at where he's won this year: the road course, mile racetrack, and here in intermediate Texas. I mean, this track is most similar to Homestead, Miami. So I guess if anything, use that for a blueprint for a possible run at the championship. Can he win Texas? I think it's Martinsville and Homestead. Those are the two I think he has the best opportunity to win at, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens for him. So Kyle Busch is runner-up in this race. He's first in the standings going into the round of 8. The fall 2007 Martinsville winner, so it's just cause and effect, chain reaction of events with Denny Hamlin and how he comes away with the win last year. So 19 top 5 finishes on the season, career best for him by virtue of that runner-up finish. And he's one more top 10 would be a career high for him, as that he's at 25 at the moment, ties his mark for 2016. So just one more top 10 finish, likely to get that at Martinsville. I think he's in any case, he didn't get it this week at Martinsville. Just a matter of when, as you know, he is likely to record one more top 10 before the season's out, and maybe 2 or 3 more top 5s. So Kyle Busch continues to alter the record book and cement his legacy as one of the all-time greats in the NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series, and that again depends on not a favorable guy in the track most of the time. Most people see him in that heel role, and that's kind of the idea, right? You're supposed to boo the heel and pray for his misfortune on the track, but Kyle Busch is just a little too savvy for that, and unfortunately for those people who do not like him, he's only going to get better, I think so, and his stock continues to rise season after season. So Kyle Larson, 3rd place run for him, eliminated from the playoffs. Not a huge surprise in my mind that he's gone. It's a disappointing run for him, disappointing way to end the season, as he ran up front for most of this race. In a post-race interview, was up front for most of this event. In a post-race interview, really downplayed it. Didn't expect to advance, I don't think. I mean, of course, he's out there to win the race. I think he didn't sign up to not win the race. I think he had every intention to, if I can go into Kansas here and pull it off and get to that round of 8, it might be 2 tails of the season. His demeanor might have been completely different, but in any case, seems to handle the defeat fairly well. So for him, very similar circumstances. He was almost eliminated at the Roval for a split second there. He was thought to have been eliminated. So 2016, 2018, eliminated from the playoff in the round of 8. Fails to reach the round of 8 in 2 of the last 3 years. It's 2016 season, 1 win, 10 top 5s, 15 top 10s. And here through 32 races, fairly similar numbers. No wins, 10 top 5s, identical to 16, and 17 top 10s. So just 2 more. It's eerie how similar those 2 campaigns are, and he has what is considered a breakout year last year as he wins 4, but really find himself in the same position a year, 2 years consecutive now, a third. But feel unnoticed. I think if you've seen the end of that interview, and we'll talk about more when we talk about the eliminated drivers, but seem to be circling Homestead as a way to play spoiler to the remaining 4 drivers that will make the final 4. And he wants to put everybody in. I'm going to get this win one way or the other, and talk about that a little bit later. But anyway, Erik Jones' 4th place run, second consecutive top 5 finish in the last 3 races. Excuse me, his second top 5 finish in the last 3 races. So since biting the bullet, suffering that crushing blow in the first round, didn't make the round of 12, has sort of gone on quite a streak and has established himself as one of the top stars or future stars of the sport. And it's interesting to see how he's bounced back from elimination in the same position where Alex Bowman's going to face in these next 3 races. Is how is he bouncing back from being ousted from the playoffs? And I think Erik Jones has done a fairly reputable job of remaining composed and just putting the playoff disappointment in the rearview mirror and focusing on how they can improve their positioning for not only the rest of this season, they could still move up in the points. It's not over till the end even the drivers who are eliminated. They can still pick up some positions or lose positions for that matter. But I think Erik Jones is trending in the right direction, and he's positioning himself, as I said, for seems to have performed well following the playoff disappointment, and likely would have advanced if he was not eliminated in the round of 60. For the round of 16, you look at the finishes he's rolling off, that would have been good enough with some help to get him through to the next round, but can't live in the what if machine and wonder what would have happened if. I think for Erik Jones, it's focusing on 2019 and finishing out this season on a fairly strong. So Martin Truex Jr. is 5th place. He advances to the round of 8, 3rd in the points going in. Drive for back-to-back titles is still alive. I mean, a lot of this team's, despite facing uncertainty for a lot of the crew members on Furniture Racing, they seem to be very much in the title fight. Again, I didn't predict him past this round. I thought this team was really just dissolving, coming apart, and he's got 3 top 5s and 3 top 5 finishes in 6 races in the playoff. It's very impressive, considering, again, circumstances, and he has not won since Kentucky. So I mean, this kind of makes the situation worse for them that you haven't won a race since July. Really wasn't expecting a whole lot here. At some points of this event was, if the race had ended where they were running, would have not even advanced into this next round. So I think the pressure out of the big 3, so the 3 that for the first half of the season had a stranglehold on the competition, is faced with adversity, not winning since July, and now figuring that Harvick hasn't won in 9 races. Kyle Busch has won in the playoff. But he's out of the 3, I think he's in the position where he's playing catch up and still seems to be content with getting to that final 4. But as some of the broadcast crew during the race itself, I think it might have been Jeff Burton, Dale Jr., I think, towards the closing moments of the event, seemed to shed light on this in so much in a roundabout way, saying Derek Jr.'s through to this round, but didn't seem to have a whole lot of confidence in his friend making it to the Final Four, and that would put him in position to win another title. It seemed that, much like myself, Dale Jr. thinks that this is over. This is just finish the season strong as you can, and I don't see this culminating in a championship run for Truex. So Britt Keselowski hit her 6th place run, leads 26 laps, eliminated from the playoffs. Disappointing to say the least. He's had that late summer hot streak of 3 consecutive wins. Seemed like Penske was on the right foot, turning things around. It's over just like that. He stumbled at the Roval, gambled at Talladega. It's cost him a chance in the round of 8. Major contender gone from this playoff championship battle. Bodes well for the remaining 8 competitors. I mean, Penske, I think, just was behind the 8 ball most of the year. Just was fairly inconsistent to start the season. And then when they started to really catch fire, it just seemed like it was too little too late for them. That just, this would have been May or June if they were hitting this kind of consistency. Could be looking at, or we could be talking about different circumstances here, but in any case, that their run is coming to an end, and we'll talk about them momentarily. Ryan Blaney, so 7th place run for him, also eliminated from playoffs. Blaney, disappointed, obviously, in a post-race interview, admits that this team, he felt, didn't have the speed to win the race on this particular day, and didn't have enough to get past this race into the next round, and feels like he let the team down. And how he bounces back from this, much like, although he has had a playoff run in the past, Eric Jones, very similar to Eric Jones and Alex Bowman, younger drivers who had an opportunity to make this playoff and have a chance to run for the championship, how he'll bounce back from this. What's the takeaway from the disappointment, and how can this team continue to build chemistry and grow and maybe be in a different position in 2019? We'll see in a minute. Just had no chance, I think, had he made his way through it's insurmountable odds. I don't think he was going to have a chance to actually add the title here. It was just making it through, I think, would help the confidence of a driver, of Ryan Blaney, who really hasn't really set the world on fire in the 12 car. I think he was expected better results, as he is finally, for years, was racing part-time for the Wood Brothers and full-time the last few years, for that matter. And it just came off as the expectation was there that the 12 car's return to the track would result in multiple win season, and Blaney finally reaching the heights in his career that we've come to expect from him. And I think there's still lots of time for Blaney. I just think, for whatever reason or other, this playoff run just wasn't his strongest. I think last year, he's virtually in the same position he was in a year ago, but I think last year he just had more of momentum, let's just call it, going into this, and not really sure. Joe Logano, so an 8th place finish for him, 100 laps led here, advances to the round of 8, the last and remaining Penske team in the playoffs. Is 5th in the standings going in. In 6 playoff races, he's had no finish worse than 14th. That was at Richmond. So by far the stronger of the Penske cars, even in spite of Keselowski winning at Vegas. I think Logano has, at some portions of this season, some pockets of in time, has been the better Penske driver, and it's really quietly remained a title contender that no one's really focusing on. I think the focus is on the other bigger names in the Stewart-Haas contingency. Joey Logano just camouflaging himself through it, and it's not exactly the worst strategy if you're trying to win yourself a championship. Stewart-Haas Racing just went cold in this one. Eric Almirola leads the way, second consecutive week. 10th place run. Starts third, finishes 10th. This is redemption for him, and it's bittersweet that he comes to this track, finishes 10th, considering the wreck that sent him out of the car at Richard Petty Motorsports in 2017. So in a place where you could relive those horrid memories, and a place like that can haunt you for years to come, just mess with your psyche. Eric Almirola comes in and does a fantastic job, and is continuing his dream season with Stewart-Haas Racing. I think he is going to have a final say in this championship, whether he is going to be racing for the title at Homestead in a few short weeks, or he's going to alter the plans of someone else who has an opportunity to claim the championship. We'll have to wait and see there. Harvick leads 76 laps here, fails again to win, sort of on a cold streak. He started the race on the outside pole. Winless drought continues here, 9 races. The last time he'd won a race was Michigan in August. I guess no reason to push the panic button yet for him. Stewart-Haas is still to me, Almirola's emergence has been absolutely refreshing. And Clint Boyer, who's sort of revitalized his career, has been a great story, but I still think Harvick is the best chance, represents Stewart-Haas Racing's best opportunity to win a championship. And I think a lot of the time and energy from that team should go into figuring out how to get Harvick back to his consistent ways and have him back in the winner's circle, because it's been quite some time, and it's uncharacteristic of Kevin Harvick in the last few years. We have Clint Boyer, 13th place run. His post-race interview was pretty entertaining, seemed very optimistic about the rest of the playoff run. Pointed out his triumph of Martinsville in the spring. Has to have that same winning attitude, can carry over that same feel if he can sort of catch lightning in a bottle, sweep the track. Locks himself in the Final Four. That's his best opportunity, I think, because I don't think he's going to be much of a factor at Texas or at Phoenix. This has been two of his least favorite tracks, I would say, statistically for him. So Martinsville I think this is something he's going to have to jump on, and him winning Martinsville would not be at all shocking, but I think it would honestly throw off most of the other competitors and the media for that, and maybe does that spoil someone else's plans that felt they could be a lock for the Final Four at Homestead. So Kurt Busch narrowly advances here to the round of 8. 18 plates finish. His focus, when you see the post-race interview at the end, seemed pretty grateful that he may squeak through, as there was at times at this race when you're watching the field and when they're running off the laps that they have the cutoff line. So drivers are on the bubble who may not advance to the next round or may advance to this round. He was blacked out there a few times. You saw him in the gray section of that bubble of the 8 drivers, and then you see the Final Four. Kurt was teetering there for a while. I thought it was would not get in. He's in. I think for him now it's just the focus is still on this championship, and I know he's been written off of his future in doubt with Stewart-Haas Racing, but I think that's still unfair for him to just overlook any kind of chance he has at winning this championship, because I think he's very much, if he's in this round of 8, runs well, he gets to the top 4, if he wins a race and solidifies his positioning, like it's just ridiculously unfair to write him off at any point. I think he's had a sensational run with Stewart-Haas Racing. If it indeed is coming to an end as speculated, think that's one of the more highly successful runs of his career. And again, like Boyer and Almirola has really turned it around for him, where he seemed like he was just gripping on to any last piece of relevancy he had from years gone by, and good for him. So the Kansas race, I said, just lacked that drama for whatever reason. Things didn't play out as expected. There was no upsets, no crazy pit strategies to play out, and no one really, I think, was all that aggressive. And for whatever case, this race sort of felt like it was a letdown. So here's a press release. It said Chase Elliott winning, but no cylinder stories. Kansas from J-Ski and ESPN. So it is here. The playoff system is known for winning. Win and you're in dramatics, the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat. It limits 4 drivers in each round. So that didn't happen, as it said here in Kansas, and the drivers eliminated seemed to shrug off their woes, contemplating that they just weren't good enough to advance while Chase Elliott captured the trophy. A little frustration, but the drama in the end was the first round of 3 drivers tied in the last spot in standing. So the Roval, I think, had that element of surprise, and I think that's why the elimination race at the Roval had that dramatic feel to it. As you know, as I said, Kyle Larson and Johnson, there was a moment of disparity there, who actually made it and who didn't make it, and then it became clear later. But that just for a moment, who was in, who was not in. And so it's Ryan Blaney said he had never felt he had a race winning speed. Made that quite obvious, as he said in the post race, and seems that he didn't have given anything away in finishing 7th. And Kyle Larson may have come close to winning speed, but he philosophized that at least that he was eliminated. He finished 3rd, and it wasn't caused by the team's woes or something out of their control, as in previous years, and we'll get to that in a minute. So Blaney, Larson, Keselowski, and Alex Bowman eliminated. Blaney challenged for the lead in the first half of the race before scrubbing the wall and fading. And Larson, who started the rear of the field after crashing the primary car in the qualifying, was able to get as high as 2nd, but eventually settled for 3rd. Here we go on to say, there's a quote here: "I'm actually glad that nothing stupid took us out of the playoffs this year. We had a battery come out at Dover a couple years ago, and we blew an engine here last year." So Kansas, you look at those frustrations from previous years, and this is sort of taking ownership for the lack of speed. And it's not for lack of speed; it's just for whatever reason or another, couldn't convert, couldn't execute, and get themselves into the final positioning for the round of 8 and a chance at the Final 4. So he says here, obviously, I would like to have made it into the next round, but I'm glad it wasn't anything other than just us not performing where we needed to be that kept us out of the next round. And it is here about Larson being pegged as one of the drivers most likely to pull off a win and in, but Chip Ganassi Racing driver had not won all year and has entered the race with a 36-point deficit at the cutoff. And the race at Kansas was typically track positioning is paramount here, and that's just the green flag pass for the lead on the track, and others during the pit cycle, and that was what Logano on the fresh 4 tires passed Blaney when he took the 2 tires. So here he says, Larson says, even the runs where I felt I was good, I can't make up at any time. Everybody's quick, and when you're the fastest, somebody gets stuck. And Larson looked at the mirror and was talking about being eliminated. He had one stage, had one win. Excuse me. He had won one stage all year, and he had finished on 12th, 11th, and 3rd, and failed to advance out of the round, but didn't earn any stage points in the open 2 races, and is shifting his efforts in this round. And it goes on to say here, for the teams that to start the playoffs with not many playoff points, you're already at a pretty big deficit of those guys, Larson said. You have to be perfect. We didn't have any stage points until today. Only 1 stage out of the last 6 races. So a lot of emphasis on this, the stage wins accumulating those points to get you to the championship or put yourself in position to run. And I think I could see that being modified or altered as this continues to set the pace for the championship, and how every race, every lap is there's an emphasis there that anytime you're on the racetrack, it is critical and vital to the success you would achieve at some point in the season, or even down when it comes to winning a championship. And he goes on to say you can't really expect to make it to the next round without being up front all race long. So that's kind of where our round went wrong. The driver who I guess who says here who arguably had the best season not to advance was Brad Keselowski, who had the 3 wins and was the closest of the cutoff entering the race. He was never factory finished 6th. This is from Keselowski. He said, "We just weren't as good today as we were yesterday in the practice, and I'm not sure why." Keselowski said, "Everyone else seemed to find a little bit from practice, and we were about the same, maybe even a little bit worse than we were in practice." About at the end of the first stage, it was pretty obvious that we needed something, and after I saw some things on the other cars, we needed something to step up. It just wasn't there. Keselowski, like Larson, was philosophical. "I am proud of what we did down the stretch of the year. We won 3 races and did all that. I feel like we can go to win Martinsville next week. I'm so excited about that. But of course, the ultimate goal is to win the championship, and we won't have the opportunity to do that this year." So Blaney appeared to have the best shot of finishing 3rd in the opening stage and 2nd in the second, but the contact with the wall ended most of his hopes, and finished 6 points behind Kurt Busch and Bowyer for that final playoff positioning. As I said, it would teeter back and forth between Blaney and Busch there on the screen. This is for Blaney. "I never thought we had a winning speed. I thought we were a 2nd or 3rd place speed, and I hit the fence." The Kansas was racist as it was set up for drama, as Busch and Bowyer had some issues and teetered on the brink of being eliminated, especially when Blaney was running with the leaders, and a NASCAR judgment call on Bowyer in which they ruled the stray tire didn't go far enough to the adjacent pit box. That could have made things more dramatic for him, but even with the penalty, he likely would have been caught. He might have been caught in the standings by Blaney, but who knows? We can't really put yourself in the what-if machine there and analyze to death. Well, if this, it just, fact of the matter is, whoever was eliminated, and the drivers who made it to the next round, they continue the inconsistencies and continue to miss their marks, will be exposed rather quickly, and they will join the fallen comrades who have fallen out of the round of 12 and the round of 16. So they said there was no Cinderella stories, and those who entered the race on the outs ended up on the outs, and only Blaney was even remotely close. Keselowski missed by 18 points, Larson by 29, and Bowman by 69. Blaney went on to say, "We gave it our all, and I raced really hard. That's just the gist of it. I messed up and cost us the shot." Blaney said that his team deserved better, but the playoffs are not about making mistakes in the pivotal situations and throughout the season. Those mistakes and lack of speed can just doom you, and I think that's that. And it just says here some other statistics from this race. So Chase Elliott, as we talked about, who just for whatever reason or another took him some time to win, went from hard luck runner-up to 3-time race winner. And Harvick, as we said, has gone 9 races without a win, and Busch has 1 win in the past 11 races. That's for Kurt we're talking there. And Brad Keselowski went from winless in 24 to winner of 3 straight, and then he's eliminated from the playoffs. So I think there's still a lot of, and there's always going to be when it comes to this format and how these points are calculated, and this has that, to me, when you see this playoff for NASCAR, it seems to have that wild card feel to it, like a team in baseball or football who necessarily didn't have the strongest year, but hovered around that making it in, not making it into the playoff season. It's similar to some of the drivers we've seen here who seem to squeak by one round, and then, as I said, are exposed for lack of speed or just overall performance in the next round, and they fail to continue. So it says here, remember when Elliott was a huge prospect who couldn't quite capture that checker flag? Now he's won 3 of the past 11 races, and in doing so is the first driver to get first 3 wins of his career in the same season since Carl Edwards did that in 2005. That's not bad at all. It's not a common feat, it says here in this press release from Jayski. It's only been done 8 times in the modern era since 1972, and it's been done by some impressive names: Carl Edwards, Jimmy Johnson, Kurt Busch, Tony Stewart, Jeff Burton, Bobby Labonte, and Jeffrey Bodine. Lot of champions in there, as it says here. So yeah, 4 champions. Could have been 5, I think. 6. Burton, Edwards. I don't think Jeffrey Bodine was really ever that close to being a champion, but in any case, 4 is a strong possibility for Elliott. As you said, Edwards and Busch both won 4 times in the first season of winning. However, it will be impossible for Elliott to set the record. In 1965, previously winless Dick Hutcherson won 9 times. So he's not going to quite catch that record, but he drove only 2 more seasons in Cup after that, winning 5 more times, and then retired to concentrate on other ventures, business ventures. So pretty big names there Chase is with. So it has here about Larson being close. Again, the best storyline on Sunday's race drew to a close whether Kyle Larson could pick up the victory, and he needed to move into the next round of the playoffs. He came up just short, finishing 3rd and remained winless on the season, despite 10 top 5 finishes. But he can take some solace in knowing that he'll have some select company if he doesn't capture a victory this season. Over the past 4 seasons, only one other driver who had a season in which they had at least 10 top 5 finishes without a victory was Mr. Chase Elliott in 16 and 17, and when you add that Larson had led more than 700 laps this season, the feat becomes a lot more select. Larson could become the 4th driver in Cup history with at least 700 laps led and 10 top 5 in a finish to be winless, joining Jeff Gordon in 2010, Mark Martin in 26, Harry Gant in 81. Some pretty reputable names right there. So it says here about there's a little write-up of Joey Logano, who finished 8th on Sunday despite leading 100 laps last week. Kurt Busch finished 14th at Talladega after hitting the triple digits in laps led. The week before that, Harvick finished 6th at Dover despite leading 286. So each of the past 8 drivers to lead 100 laps in a race and fail to win. That includes August race at Bristol, in which 3 drivers led more than 100 laps and none of them won. This season, 27 drivers led at least 100 laps in a race, and only 10 ended up winning, a rate of 34%. That seems low, but actually better than it has been in recent years. Since 2011, only 34% of the drivers have won races in which they led at least 100 laps. But it didn't used to be that way. From 2005 to 2010, it was much more reasonable at a 45% ratio. Okay, so now for the 4 drivers who weren't fortunate enough to advance to the next round. I feel what's next for them. So for Alex Bowman, I think it's fair to say, wasn't on anyone's radar or predicted by anyone. And be honest, but you say in a crowded room, well, who is predicting Alex Bowman to the round of 12? Raise your hand. No hands are going up. Trust me, don't. Don't put that hand up. Just put it back down, because no one did. I didn't even think so. I think he was. I just didn't think he was gonna make it past. I think it was one of those. It's nice to be nominated, but I ain't winning this. No chance at this, and he's exceeded expectation in the 88. That's for sure. In 2018, I think nobody expected a playoff run. I think he was predicted by most publications preseason to go either 20th to 25th in the points. Maybe someone had him as deep as 28, but in any case, made the playoff. Enjoyed a career high for himself, a career high finish at Pocono. Finished 3rd in July. It's pretty much a career year for him if you look at it. I know there's still lots of room for improvement here, and this team's only going to get better. His chemistry builds, and Alex continues to soldier on as he got himself a contract extension with this team. 2 more years in this car. It's only going to get better. But for what it was worth this season, exceeded expectations, performed a lot better than I thought he would perform, and just continues to build a solid career in the Cup Series in the '88 car, and that's what he's done in 32 races. His average finish here is 16.3. It's pretty good. So '88 from you look at the stats from the '88 from a year ago to now. So the top fives he has 3, and he had 11 top tens. In 2017, when Dale Jr. was in the '88, 1 top 5, 8 top tens, and that's through 36 races. So just really awful year for him. I started off the year on the right foot, wins the Daytona 500 pole. Had some success in the car last year when he ran the exhibition race at Daytona the week before the Daytona 500. So he had a really strong run there. Could be a factor in restrictor plates in 2019 Daytona, so that could be where the focus will shift. Started off the year, as I said, I'm doing really well. Focused on just improving that chemistry with Greg Ives in 2019. Getting this team up to par with the 9 car, I think, because the 9 car now, I think, is the cornerstone of Hendrick Motorsports. I know Jimmy Johnson's on the back end of his career, struggling. William Byron, maybe a sophomore year for him. I think this is a golden opportunity for like Alex Bowman and Greg Ives, the crew chief, to establish themselves as the number 2 car in the Hendrick stable, just behind Chase Elliott, or to mirror some of the stats Elliott has compiled this year. And Chase Elliott has had a career year as well. Again, you can call it a career for Bowman too. So he spent the whole season pretty much in the playoff hunt. The lowest he's ever been in position in the point standings was 17th, and that was at the second race of the season at Atlanta. And Phoenix, I said, I don't see him winning this season, but I think Phoenix, his home track, could be his best opportunity, as he would run a 6th place race there in 2016, subbing for Dale Jr., and just keep a positive attitude. And this has been a really fun underdog story in the playoffs, a fun underdog story all year. So I think when Alex Bowman was named the driver of this team following Dale Jr.'s retirement, it was met with quite a bit of criticism. I don't think anyone thought Alex Bowman had a chance of sustaining longevity in his career, even with Hendrick, based on his prior Cup shortcomings with Tommy Baldwin Racing and BK. But I guess, as you know, anyone who follows the sport and is a smart mark, and it's no disrespect to Baldwin or BK, but Hendrick is no Baldwin or BK, and I mean, not even in the same put them in the same category. The only thing they have in common, they both raced in NASCAR Cup Series, and that's where the comparisons end. Hendrick Motorsports is, as anyone knows, is the premier team, one of the premier, and could be even still the premier team at the Cup Series. And Alex Bowman has truly made the '88 his own, and good for him for that. And now it's time to regroup and see what 2019 offers for Alex Bowman and the number 88 Chevrolet. So Kyle Larson, he again fails to make the round of 8 for the second time in 3 years. It's a season where he was predicted, as I said, a title favorite. Struggled to find the winner's circle in 2018, following 4 wins in 17. And I think I looked at his stats numerous times throughout the year, and I think statistically, the season is not all that different from a year ago. I think it's the 4 wins that really present itself on paper as if Larson has regressed. Narrowly survived the first round, as we talked about the Roval. His 3rd place finish in Kansas. First top 5 since the playoff opener at Las Vegas, where he was the runner-up. 6 runner-up finishes in 2018. He's failed to execute and put those fast cars that Ganassi has supplied to him this season in the winner's circle. And in his post-race interview, he seemed to have a chip on his shoulder. He wants to win at Homestead. Sort of could be the spoiler, kind of put the rest of the title candidates on notice, saying, championship goes through Kyle Larson. He is dead set on winning a race this season, and Homestead Miami could be one of those events where, and that streak since 2014 is that the driver who's gone on to win that race has won the championship. So it'd be an interesting dynamic to see that come down to positioning. I know you win the race and the title's yours, but if someone like a Kyle Larson or even another driver plays the role of spoiler, where would that leave the battle for this championship? The other drivers who are competing, it would become a battle for positioning. It would be just as valuable as winning the race. So he has to find a way, I think, moving forward. Where do you go here? What's next for Kyle Larson and the Chip Ganassi Racing Team? Find a way to recapture that 2017 form. Execute, translate those fast cars, the speed you're finding in practice or in qualifying to victories, because I think that's really what cost Kyle Larson an opportunity to really compete for this title this year, that they cannot find the winner's circle, and there's so much emphasis now on winning, and that's what wins you the championships. Consistency wins championships, yes. But the way this playoff is designed, it doesn't cater to that philosophy, and the philosophy here is you win a bunch of races and you're in, and you have a chance to compete for that championship. So we'll chalk it up to an off year, I think. Don't let anyone read too much into his future. I think he has a tremendous upside. He's still one of the bright young stars of the future. At 26 years old in 2019, has plethora of good years ahead of him. I think time to compete for championships, and if anything, I still think so much is expected out of him, is how well he's run in Xfinity and how well he's run in Cup, and there's just that added amount of pressure and expectation on him based on some of his past triumphs in the sport. And I think Larson, he's the future of Chip Ganassi Racing. I think it's equally I think it's just one of those things where you see something on paper and you expect the results to just leap off the page, and for whatever reason or another, Kyle Larson has yet to really do any of that in 2018, and just hope he doesn't fall by the wayside, but I just cannot see that coming to fruition for him. Too much talent for that. So Keselowski here, extremely disappointed in his post-race interview. Really, BK's inconsistency, I think, at the beginning of the season is what really cost him an opportunity at a deep playoff run here and a chance to win the championship. The 3 consecutive wins towards the end of the summer there, that hot streak just wasn't enough. I think he hit their stride, and I think it was a great story. At the time, it was good for the headlines. I think a lot of supporters and enthusiasts in the sport were sick and tired of the Big Three trading wins back and forth. That seemingly this is the counterculture. This is the answer to the Big Three, is Brad Keselowski, and by his fan base and his blue-collar nature, I think this is why a lot of people got behind him, wanted to see him do well. Just missed the mark here, and the gambles here at the Roval, Talladega, Kansas. Leads laps at all 3 of those races, goes for broke, it just doesn't translate to victories, and I think that's what leaves Brad Keselowski an eliminated driver, and leaves the whole number 2 team scratching their heads. Where did we miss the mark? I think what's next for him is focusing on finding that championship magic again from 2012. And find his way back to that Final Four. I think if he's in that opportunity to, like he was in 2017, find his way to that Final Four. Now we're at that Final Four format at Homestead. Keselowski and Paul Wolf the crew chief have worked together for so long that they can make this work. I think they can get back to where they were in 2012, and are still very much each and every year come out strong. And it's a good race. Team Penske's a great race team. They're resilient. They're gonna find their way back from this. But I think at this point, it's all about getting himself to where they were even last season or when they were competing for championships. And we talked a lot this year. He's closing in on 30 wins for his career. His legacy is growing. I said we talked about potentially Hall of Fame. The 2 races he's won the championship. He's in that conversation. We're starting to think of him as a potential future Hall of Famer. I think that's just a tremendous compliment to Brad Keselowski, given some of his humble beginnings in the sport, and he has to be content with stepping up his game to compete with those big 3 and other, even within his own team. Joey Logano's had a phenomenal season, and just dangerous driver. I mean, when he's hot and he gets in his zone, he gets in a groove. He's one of the top, as we've seen with the 3 wins consecutive at the end of the summer. He's one of those drivers that is fairly hard to beat, and I think some of the competitors remaining in this championship fight were relieved to hear that he didn't make the round of 8. They would have to contend with him and him go off. You'd say he just goes off on another hot streak. That momentum could carry him all the way to the championship. It's not going to happen this season, but I think for Keselowski in 2019 is just find consistency often and maintain that consistency throughout, and the results, I promise you, would look a heck of a lot different on the score sheet. So Ryan Blaney, 2 consecutive years, he fails to make the round of 8. Inconsistency, much like Brad Keselowski, early in the season cost him a legitimate playoff run. He wins at the Roval. That was unexpected. That was just kind of out of nowhere, right place, right time. But he failed to capitalize on that big win. Could have used that win at the Roval as a way to establish himself as a legitimate championship contender. And I think at that point, no one was really focused on that or even seen him at that. He said it was just a great story that he won the Roval. And again, maybe someone will just say, they'll be cynical and say, well, this is the right place at the right time. He really actually had no business running up front there and taking the win. And it was a long shot for him to advance. I think he knew that. I think the whole team knew that they had to win this race. And then he admitted several times that throughout the weekend that they just didn't have the speed or they didn't have a winning car. They had a great car, but not a winning car. I think what's next for him is just building consistency for longer playoffs runs for next season. Don't beat yourself up. I think that's one of Ryan Blaney's it's not one of his strong suits right now. He seems to take the loss personally and puts all it on him. He's carrying that on his back, and it's a team effort. You win as a team and you lose as a team. You can't take the entire race team's shortcomings to heart and put that burden on you. And I think that's what's really cost Ryan Blaney in recent years here. And year 2 with Penske, just trying to develop that chemistry with the number 12. It's kind of pretty much it's the same team he ran with the Wood brothers, but it's not, certain elements of it's not the same. And I think it's year 2 for him in the 12th car next year. He's going to find his footing. He's going to find what works best for him and continue to build his way and build a legacy for himself at Penske. And then it's the reason why he was hired. He saw the talent in him, and I think focus on that 3rd consecutive playoff appearance and finding a way to make next year's run memorable and without the disappointment. I think that's all it is. It's just much like Keselowski, limit the mistakes and don't find consistency when perhaps it might be just a little past the expiration date and a time when you actually have to focus and go all in on winning. And we'll see what happens with him. So other news here, so we'll move away from Kansas, is Scott Graves is returning to Roush Fenway Racing. As it was announced here, Scott Graves, who most recently worked as a crew chief for Daniel Suarez. I feel like we talk about him in each and every episode. He's definitely over like Rover Daniel Suarez on this super fantastic, above average racing spectacular. He was named the crew chief for the 6th car, Ryan Newman. Last 3 seasons were spent with JGR. He and Suarez he was instrumental in Suarez taking the checkers and winning at Homestead and winning the 2016 Xfinity title. That was back-to-back Xfinity titles for him, as he would win in 2015 with Chris Buescher, and then Suarez in 16. He joined for Roush Fenway Racing back in 2006. Scott Graves worked his way up from team engineer to crew chief in 2012, and was a crew chief for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in the Cup Series in 2013 in his rookie campaign in the Cup. And his an engineering background, seems to be a good fit with Purdue alumni Ryan Newman. Also, we all know his story, his engineering degree. So I think Scott Graves bounces back here, returns back to Roush Fenway. Could be just what the 6 team, I think, needs to improve their performance, and Newman and him, I think, will be a formidable combination, and expect the overall performance of the number 6 car from Roush Fenway Racing to improve from what it has been this season and in previous seasons. I think Scott Graves, who's familiar with the organization, has worked here before, is going to settle in nicely to his role here, and I think Roush Fenway Racing is going to improve their performance a great deal in 2019. So we'll talk about Kasey Kahne this week. An article was released on JSki ESPN about that he's happy with where he's at, and where he is, walking away from the car. He will not return to Cup racing, as we know. So here it said he hit Kasey Kahne. So this is here. He had trouble believing how good he felt on Monday. He had raced over the weekend in a sprint car in California for a Make-A-Wish Foundation benefit race. He traveled across the country, and he said he felt fresh. This is a quote from Kahne. He said, "I feel perfect," he said during a phone interview this week. "I just haven't felt this good on a Monday in so long. I get better every day, and I feel better about my decision and where I am at. And now my body's starting to feel better as well." It's been a strange 7 weeks for Kahne, who stepped out of the NASCAR Cup Series ride on September 2nd, race at Darlington, where dehydration issues caused him to have trouble seeing and to feel nauseous. He had these symptoms before, but the humidity that night and the length of the race took a worse toll on his body. He tested the car at the Charlotte Motor Speedway on October 2nd and suffered the same symptoms after 2 hours in the car. He wasn't released to drive, and he has no plans to race Cup again, even though he would like to do so. Kahne, who's 38, who announced in August that he wouldn't return to full Cup scheduled after the season, has undergone tests to learn what happened to his body, and how some answers. And he has some answers, although not enough for anyone to be able to pinpoint how another driver could prevent the same thing from happening. He goes on to say, "I sweat so much sodium out of my body, and once you get over 2 hours, I can't even come close to a race, to replacing it. So to replenish what you lose in..." And I say these guys aren't athletes. Come on. You ever see the in-car camera when you see these drivers, the in-car shots from whoever is broadcasting the race? They're working the wheel. It seemed that it's not a leisurely drive in circles, as everyone says. You're actually takes a lot of physical prowess to psyche too, to get yourself up for 2 or 3.5 hours in a race car, 400 miles, wherever you are, grueling heat. It's really hot in one of those cars, from what you hear, and it's been reported back through the years. It's not just this leisurely drive. You're actually really got to work that wheel, because it's physics. You're going on a racetrack, whether it's a mile, super speedway, short track. You're eclipsing speeds of over 200 miles per hour, and you're expecting yourself to. You have to condition yourself, because it's not a sprint; it's a marathon. And I think you have to have that mentality in any form of athletics, but at this point, even in NASCAR, and that's why I said these guys are athletes. I mean, that debate will rage on as time goes on, and I would have to say I'm in favor of that. Race car drivers are indeed athletes, and so we'll go back here. It says, I'm sweating so much out. You can't hydrate enough prior to it or during the race to get back in, to get the sodium back. He said, it got to the point where I could not keep up. I'm glad I know all that now and understand it. So he said he understands that his body has changed and all. He doesn't know why his body is so susceptible to dehydration. It sounds like through the environment we live in and the age you sweat volume, you can change over the years. And the 140-pound Kahne said, my sweat volume changed to being a pretty high volume. He said when he was younger, a majority of the races he won were 500, 600-mile races, and he just never wore it out. He was never hot. I never sweated out, never. Everybody's bodies and are different, and he says here, and that's just the direction mine went, and I wasn't able to keep up, and that's just where I'm at now. So Kahne was not having a great season when the season started with this Levine Family Racing team. I think when it was announced that he would be taking this opportunity in 2018, I think there was not a whole lot of optimism or real expectations that were bestowed upon this team. And Regan Smith has replaced him for the remainder of the year in the Levine Family Racing car. And here's a quote back from Kahne. He said, the big thing for me was to come back at Dover and finish out the year and doing it with LFR, Kahne said. When I found out I wasn't going to do Dover and I wasn't going to finish off the season, I was really discouraged and disappointed. The disappointment of not racing the past 2 months appears gone. Mentally, I feel better because I'm starting to be okay with not racing in NASCAR. Kahne said, I'm feeling better that way, and definitely physically being hydrated. Every race was taking me till at least Tuesday before I felt decent, and it was only decent. The longer, hotter races were taking me until Wednesday, Thursday, Friday before I felt decent. You don't really realize it when you're living it every single week, because it just becomes part of how you feel, and it's normal. So you think that that's how you feel. But now, being off for 2 months and my body totally recovering from everything, I'm like, wow, I actually feel way better. So Kahne said he doesn't think he'll do anything to control the change in his body. He half-heartedly said that he weighed 180 pounds or 200. If he weighed 180 pounds or 2 pounds, he might have had enough sodium in his system and possibly would have not had as much issues. It certainly caught his attention of the competitors in the Cup Series, and this is what Joey Logano went on to say, that the heat that we face every week in our race cars has to take a toll on our body. We train for it. I feel like Kasey is one of the drivers that was in shape more than others, probably more than me, even me. Drivers varied on how much they wanted to know about Kahne's condition. Chase Elliott said that the driver's health should remain a private issue. Others were also felt that they can do only so much to prevent what is unpredictable, and it's important for all of them to understand what it is, and at the same time why they prepare, and because you never know what's going to happen in our life in a race car, Logano would say. Just walking across the street, you can get hit by a car and it's all over. It is important to look past the hood pins in life and make sure that you're prepared for the worst and hope for the best. So it says here, Kahne, I think there's a lot of speculation as we look at this about Kahne, and he's out of this car. I think it's announced in August that he's no longer going to be with this team. He's stepping away full-time from Cup racing. There's no desire to do this anymore, and a few short weeks later, he's permanently out of this car and has no opportunity to return, not medically cleared. But in any case, you can read between the lines and you can speculate for what you are, rumor and innuendo, but I think it's just a matter of a driver who may not express a strong desire to do this anymore, and I think it's best just to leave it at that. And Kahne would go on to say, you see guys who have issues like, so look here at Kahne, who's still in great shape, feels like he'd go run a half marathon. And with it being done in less than 2 hours, he'd be fine. So just a couple of weeks ago, Kahne was working alongside with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. It was nice to at least know he's done some testing, and maybe we can look at some results and actually see if there's a way that to maybe a little to be proactive about it. Maybe when you start feeling some of those symptoms come on, as far as being run down and things like that after the races, like Kahne said, you're dealing with that, like Kasey's been dealing with, Stenhouse said. Know that probably had issues with his performance over the years, and maybe not knowing that those issues were there. And it's definitely a bummer that he couldn't finish out the season with us. I was just working out with him, and I know he really wanted to finish out the year and try to get a good solid run at the end of his retirement. So Kahne said he still has some hopes to get into a Cup car, but as he watched the races and kept up with what was going on in the sport, he said he just doesn't know if a return is at all feasible. Kahne, this is from a quote from Kahne, I'd love to get back in a car someday, but I'm just not sure that will happen. I don't know. I'm not racing the super hot races, the super long races, things like that. It's hard to pick and choose and not know what the weather is going to do. It's not an easy task at this point. So the plan is, they said, to run about 50 sprint car races next year and get to the point where he's competitive in those cars after a 15-year Cup career. He wants to stay active, but he'd like to be active and feel strong. So I think Kahne is speculated several times that he's probably never going to run in this Cup Series again. Might come back for an Xfinity race or truck race, whatever the case may be. One off in the Cup, who knows? But I think this is, the more you read into the story and the less you the more you tend to ignore and block out what's fabricated. And there's a lot of fabrication out there, a lot of bullshit. And I think you should just really, if you're really one of those people that appreciates the sport and is a real racing enthusiast that respects all the competitors and what these guys do on a week-to-week basis, just give Kahne a round of applause. He had a great career. Not quite Hall of Fame, not quite championship caliber, but all in all, had an opportunity to, as we talked about a couple episodes ago, what he accomplished, and to reach those heights he did with teams like Red Bull Racing and Richard Petty Motorsports, the transition from Evernham Motorsports to Gillette Evernham, and Hendrick even still finding a way to pick up the win at the Brickyard in 2017, when knowing that he was likely not ever going to race for that team again, and winning the championship, or if he had made the playoffs and went on to be a part of the Final Four, and would say, let's just say hypothetically won the championship. It's just the tenacious nature of Kasey Kahne, that he would race hard week after week, knowing that there might not be the payoff, and that Hendrick Motorsports had already set its driver lineup, and he wouldn't be a part of that lineup in 2018. And for whatever reason, Kahne never once grumbled about it, or even could never see that he was upset about it. He would just continue to soldier on and tried to get the team the best possible finish again. And that's what he did with Levine family too. Prior to that, I mean, this team started off really sluggish, lethargic out of the gate. Had only the top 5 finish at Daytona in July, but I don't know. I don't think he was ever going to win in that car, but I think if he had an opportunity to continue on with them, and then the manufacturer changed Toyota, you just never know what Kahne could have. I compared it to, at the time, I think when I first heard the announcement, I thought that could have been something like Martin Truex Jr., but for Turo. Have the one-off year where they struggle, and then they finally find their rhythm in year 2, 3, etc. But we'll never know with Kasey Kahne, so we can't think about what might have been. We'll just, like I said, wish him the best of luck in his future, and certainly entertained in 15 years of his Cup career, did he not? So Martinsville here is coming up, the tricky paperclip round number 3, well, the round of 8, whatever you want to call it, of the playoffs. This is the first race, Martinsville. So 8 different winners, and then last 9 Martinsville races. Race 1 of the round of 8, as we said. Chase Elliott. So here's the 5 drivers I think you should keep an eye on. Chase Elliott. So a little bit of racing karma. Should have won this race a year ago at Martinsville. Denny Hamlin had something to say about that. So his best finish was 3rd in the spring of 2017. I know, again, his record, like I told you last week when I put him on that list of 5 drivers you should watch at Kansas. Not necessarily I'm putting him here based on previous experience and finishes here. So he's won 2 of the last 3 races in the round of 12, so the playoffs. That momentum is going to carry over. Momentum, it's like wildfire. It's just going to continue to burn and burn and burn. And I think has that opportunity to establish himself as one of the top stars in the sport, live up to that pedigree. Hendrick has a rich history at Martinsville. You know, the tragedy that they faced a while back, but I think 24 wins at Martinsville for Hendrick as a team, Hendrick Motorsports. Chase Elliott would certainly like to put himself in that category with some of the big names like Jeffrey Bodine, Darrell Waltrip, Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson and Dale Jr., who have won Cup races for Rick Hendrick at Martinsville. Last Chevy, this is the final Chevy car and the final hope for Hendrick for a title in 2018. The sole reason why I'm putting Chase Elliott on there is just the amount of momentum this team is carrying and how hot they've been over the past month that you can't overlook them. I think you just can't sleep on them. Clint Boyer, spring 2018 winner. I think he's one to watch here. 3 races with Surhaus Racing. He's finished 7th in the spring of 2017, 3rd in the fall of 17. He wins the race in the spring of 18. And as I said, we said 6 career top 5 finishes in 25 starts at Martinsville. This is, to me, and I said it, his best opportunity out of the final 3 races before the Final Four to win, to get in. I think his record at Texas and Phoenix is not strong enough to, if he has to rely on winning those races or consistency to get to that Final Four, that just might not cut it. It's all or nothing for him at Martinsville. I think he has to try to go out there, complete the sweep, knows how to let a bunch of laps, over 200 laps in the spring, sort of go back to those notes, find that same setup, and this is, as I said, this is his golden opportunity to put himself in the Final Four and really upset the plans of 7 other drivers, put the pressure on them. So Kyle Busch here, obviously, anywhere Kyle Busch goes, he's a driver that you got to keep your eyes on, but more so here, Martinsville. He won the 2017 fall race, 6 consecutive top 5 finishes at Martinsville. 2 of those of those 6 are wins, and he won the last short track race that was in the playoffs at Richmond. He was a runner-up at Kansas, hitting his marks. In my opinion, even though as good as Harvick's been this season and previous seasons, out of that big 3 we talk about constantly, I think Kyle Busch has had the best season of the 3 drivers. Certainly is going to be in the Final Four, much to the chagrin of the people who make it their life's work to boo him and shit on him. He's going to be there. So he's going to heel. He's going to play the heel role, and you can like it, don't like it, whatever. Doesn't really matter. Kyle Busch is generational talent. I think that is just working his way towards a Hall of Fame career, and championship number 2 could go through Martinsville. A.J. Allmendinger, I think we should keep an eye on him. Nothing to lose attitude. He has nothing lined up for 2019. Plans are up in the air. What better way than to try to go out, maybe gamble with fuel mileage, tires, whatever, try to win this race. 2 runner-up finishes at Martinsville in the spring of 2012 and 16. 3 top 10 finishes in the last 3 Martinsville races. Seems to get on really well around this racetrack. Memorable for me was 2016 when he's just really maybe a few more laps away, just a few more laps in this race. Could have surpassed Kyle Busch, passed him for the lead. Could have taken the checkers that day. Seems to get around Martinsville incredibly well. And like I said, a really dangerous driver with nothing to lose. Be a nice way for him to go out, finish his NASCAR career, because I really think, as much as I like A.J. Allmendinger, I think he has still a little bit left in the tank. I just really can't see him finding anything at the Cup level in 2019, giving the limited number of seats that are available, maybe something in a part-time capacity, or if he decides to take a ride with someone like Front Row or some of the other lower-tier teams in the sport. That's the only way I think he continues his career in the Cup Series, and I would really like to see him in an open-wheel car next year. I think going back to the IndyCar Series could do him some good. He's had a tremendous career in Cup, but I think you're not going to see him among the drivers on the roster for NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series in 2019. And finally, Jimmy Johnson. Can never count out Jimmy Johnson, as we talked about with Chase. He's won here 9 times in his career. That streak is in tremendous jeopardy at this point. And he can win at any one of the tracks remaining, but I think Martinsville has always been one of his go-to tracks, and he won the fall race here in 2016, so that's not all that long ago. Given Hendrick's tremendous record at this racetrack, why not Jimmy Johnson? He rallied back for a good finish respectable finish at Talladega. Was off the mark again at Kansas. But if anyone needs a pick-me-up and a chance to really just needs a win, it's Jimmy Johnson. I think he's someone that you cannot sleep on anytime, any track, but especially a place like Martinsville, where he's enjoyed tremendous amount of success in his career, and should be a good run for him on Sunday, regardless if he captures the checkered flag or not. So we're going to wave the checkered flag on this episode of the super fantastic above average racing spectacular. Thank you for listening, and I have the bonus episode. I went back into the archives. We've just posted to the Pepsi 400 on Monday from Daytona in 1998. And coming up is the kart finale, the 500, is just known as the 500 from Fontana. Pretty eventful event for its time. I mean, great race. Juan Montoya was into the final race battling Dario Franchitti. This went down on October 31st of 1999. I have that posted for you shortly as well, in addition to this episode we just recorded here. Dario versus Juan Montoya, neck and neck for the kart championship. Fortunately, Greg Moore would lose his life in that race. Just horrific accident. And going back and watching this race again for the first time in nearly 19 years, I thought it was tremendous. I thought kart was one of those series that, with the emergence of Indy Racing League and the time, put a lot of pressure on Champ Car to stay relevant in America, and I think that's ultimately what led to their demise. And a lot of the drivers you'll see in this race, a lot of names we haven't really talked about on the program, went on to enjoy great careers in NASCAR. Dario had an opportunity to try out NASCAR. Juan Montoya won some cup races, made the playoffs one year. Pretty much drive the wheels off anything he ever stepped in behind the cockpit of. Max Pappas had a great race. Remember Max from stays with Germain Racing and working with RCR, I believe, in some capacity as a driver coach. Well-respected driver in the NASCAR Cup Garage, but this time was racing for Bobby Rahal and led a good chunk of this race, and seeing some names like Paul Tracy in this race, Michael Andretti, some big names from racing's past and open wheel racing in America. Covered this race. Scott Pruitt, he was on the pole for this race, his final event, before he went cup racing in the year 2000. And a pretty eventful race, as I said, and I think it's something that I wanted to cover in part of our bonus episodes, to step away from Cup Series for a bit and just put other racing series in the spotlight and at the forefront. And so it's coming up. This will be posted shortly after this broadcast. The 1999 Champ Car finale, simply known as I think it was the Marlboro 500, but this referenced in ESPN broadcast, the 500. So I'll be posting that. So it's the first ever race I've covered in the Champ Car Series, first of many. I'm also going to cover some Indy Racing League in the future as well, Xfinity, maybe some Truck Series. So just other things that were not related to the Monster Energy Cup Series, or then Winston Cup, next Stellar Sprint Cup. However you want it. The titles change so much, but however you want to remember the series as, we'll cover a lot of those races in the coming months. But until then, I just want to thank everyone for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you next time on the super fantastic above average racing spectacular.